Alright, comic review time, and yet again is a pretty big stack of comics. Again, I'll mention that I'm going to get into why this is a brief change in, it's a long story, why there's a brief change in, I don't want to say plans, what's the word I should use instead? That's not really the best word to use. In the way I do things, because ordinarily I would at most have like 7 comics, maybe even 8. But I think we have, like, and these are mostly library books, we have, after it's count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 books, only 4 of which are 10, and 1 movie, only 4 of which are from my PC. So, usually we don't have that much to review, because I don't like to put that much in my backpack to go to work the next day with. Even if I do return them right away. And these are all soft covers anyway, so I guess that would be the worst thing to do. But anyways, I do actually like doing it this way if I can help it. I can't, unfortunately, and situations are not like this. So I will do like 7. You know, even like 7 or 8 is a good number for me. But we are at 14 right now. And the reason why is that, like, I don't like doing, like, 4 comic reviews, like, oh, here's 4 comics I'm reviewing, and then the next week it's, like, 3, then the following week it's 7, like, I like to do it all at once, kind of thing. I feel like that's a better video overall when I have more comics to review. Even if the video itself doesn't come out that great, like the last video I did when I was reviewing the comics I wasn't super satisfied with, as, you know, so it's not really that, it's more just... So it's also just like kind of like the way I'm planning to do videos now is to do less videos per month and not doing 1 video per week. Whereas before I was like, oh, well, it's actually kind of convenient, if anything, that I have 4 comics to review this week and then 4 comics to review next week. So I have videos for the next 2 weeks planned out. And oh, would you look at that? The 3rd week is when I do my comic haul, and the 4th week is when I do the complete comic haul, so it works out in the end. But now that I'm now that I'm fine with doing less frequent uploads, it works out in the end. It kind of works out better for me to, in turn, do a comic review video where it's more comics. Now I need to put these in the different order now, because I just realized that, yeah, let's do it this way. Also, the movie reviews. I don't think I'm ever going to go back to this Justin Movies, my second channel, because of the fact that I really feel like doing comic reviews is easier than doing movie reviews. Now, if I edited, that'd be a different story, but even then, I don't know. It's one of those things that there's a noticeable difference for me. Now, if you want to get movie reviews, go to my Instagram. My Instagram, I'll put in the description if I remember. But my Instagram is also where I review comics more rapidly and sooner. I believe just about every comic I'm reviewing here, save for a few, I already reviewed on Instagram. So if you want a text-only review, somehow, or for some reason, you can go over to my Instagram. And then they also do movie reviews there. Because I think it's easier doing it during text. It's easier doing it through text than vocally for movie reviews for me, and no, I don't know why that is for me. I think because it's like I'm typing it, so... I mean, a big thing is, like, if I mention, like, oh, the cinematography is really good in this scene, blah, blah, sometimes it's easier for me to think about it, and then I can think about it and type it as I'm thinking, think, type, and I can go back, like, no, actually I meant to say this, whereas in the comic, you know, this is live, technically. If anything, because I don't edit, essentially every video is 1 take. Sometimes I'll mess up, we'll get interrupted, so I'll have to cancel the video and then do another cut, but essentially this is 1 take. For the most part, it's 1 take. Without further ado, let's get into it, because we are already 4.5 minutes in. Underground by Jeff Parker. Now, I own this in both the Oni Press printing, which is seen right here, and the original Image Comics printing. The first time, just out of pure novelty, so back in the day before I had my job, when I had all the time in the world at my disposal, I would read a lot of comics, naturally. And one of the practices I would do is it would be 25 comics, and then when, like I say 2 of them are 4 issues. So instead of making it be 23 comics I prefer that I would read, from that day on, I would exchange the 4-issue series with 2 more books. So it would still be 25, and then, because usually it would just work out to where no matter what, it would be like maybe 4-issue series, but after that it would be 5-issue series, or like it's like 5 or 6 of them. And instead of exchanging 6 books, I would just then go down the list as per usual. But that happened again this time. So it's instead of it's exchanged an Oni Press book, another Oni Press book. So that's why I decided to read my copy of Underground through the Oni Press printing. Now that makes no sense to most of you, but let's move on then. This is by Jeff Parker, and Jeff Parker is that writer that I didn't really click with. His Batman 66 run, I just did not really like at all. I kind of thought it was a bit boring, if anything. I thought I liked the bits and pieces from it. I liked how when it would go to more zany or whatever's, but also that was over just way too much dialogue too. And it was one of those one and done. Like, I've never had the inclination. I've never been tempted to go back to reading Batman 66, and even then I think I only read volume 1, if that. It was one of those books I was like, I am not going to continue with this series, so let's drop that to volume 1. So I've not had the biggest opinion about Jeff Parker's writing. This is pretty damn good. It seems like Jeff Parker really does like to do a lot of heavy dialogue. There's a lot of scenes where there did not need to be this much dialogue, but there was. I felt like there was less pages like this and more pages like this. And this is honestly, I would argue, to be one of the scenes with the lighter dialogue, even though there's word balloons on pretty much every panel, and it's rivals Silver Age at points. Now, that is fine in certain respects. You can't have a comic have no dialogue, obviously. Even though comics is a visual medium, you still need dialogue here and there. I completely understand that. Some silent comics, when they have no dialogue, like they did that for G.I. Joe. They didn't do it with G.I. Joe, but they would also do it for Spider-Man. Like a bunch of Marvel books did that back in the day. It was called Nuff Said. And I will acknowledge that it is kind of tougher to read comics that way. It seems like it wouldn't be, but it kind of is tougher to read comics that way, especially when it's trying to tell an actual story and not just be one big fight scene. So I do understand why comics do actually need dialogue despite being a visual medium. However, there are times where the dialogue gets to be too much, and this is where I started to notice it. But there were also times, I would say it was like a healthy mix between having too much dialogue but you understood why, but then just having too much dialogue. You didn't need it. It's like exposition kind of, like, that kind of shit. But overall, I did like this book. I will give it a solid 6.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it enough. I'm glad I own this, and I'm glad I decided to double dip and get the Image Comics printing, as this was originally published under the Image Comics belt. And also just to have it be uniform. But yeah, 6.5 out of 10. Definitely better than his Batman 66. And I really do want to check out his other series here from Oni Press, Meteor Man. Unfortunately, I don't have it at the local library, I don't think. But if I did, I'd check it out. Or if it's on sale, I would check it out. But I do recommend it. Everything above a 6 out of 10, I do recommend. So 6 out of 10 and above is a recommend. 5 and below is, like, even 5 out of 10 is like, kind of, maybe. Like, I'd have to explain myself. Usually there's an asterisk next to a 5 out of 10 rating for me. But 5 out of 10 and below is not really a recommend, especially as you go down, obviously. Not a whole lot else to mention about this series. I also did, one thing I will give it is that for a story that started out being kind of confusing as, not confusing, but confused as to why this is, what's the hook here? It does get really interesting, and for a story that if it were made into a movie, I would probably see as like predictable and not my thing, this was my thing. And that's the thing about comics. It's really weird. Like, movies that I was like, yeah, that's not my thing. In comic form, it is. Godzilla being the main example. biggest example. A lot of it's with the human characters, but even like in comic form, like I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Of course, I've not checked out Godzilla movies, so maybe it would change, but that's how I feel for the most part. Cemetery Kids Don't Die. Zach Thompson is a writer I don't know a whole lot about. I have read his Yondu series, that's about it. I know of him, but I don't know his work. I haven't read much of work, I mean. And this one is kind of an indication as to why that is. This is very much an okay kind of book. Now, it was interesting enough to where I do want to check out Volume 2. However, I am going to other avenues. The library does not have Volume 2. So I'm going to have to go to other avenues to read Volume 2. And I hate to say it, I hate to be a dick about it, but... I mean, honestly, the library had... If they didn't have Volumes 1 and 2, maybe I would be more inclined to buy it. But it's like, the library doesn't have Volume 2. And there's only 2 volumes, I think, at least, in this series so far. So, like, why not go to other avenues to read Volume 2? Here's the physical copy of Volume 1, proof that I went to the right avenues to check out Cemetery Kids Don't Die, you know? It's just one of those things where I kind of, like, justify it in my head. And it makes more sense the more I think about it. And I hope it makes more sense the more I'm mentioning it. But anyways, this was alright. The story itself is pretty interesting, but it's just kind of, like, cliched and basic, the way that they go about it. Kind of bland, too. But it's just interesting enough, like, by the skin of its fucking teeth, it is just interesting enough to where I want to check out Volume 2. It also helps that both volumes are only 4 issues long, which is the second shortest you can have a mini-series be, before it's just, like, you can't even tell a story in, like, 2 issues, even if it's 48 pages. Like, 3 issues is hard enough, like, 4 is just hard enough, I would say. So one thing I will give it, so it does feel like it's quicker when it's 4 issues rather than 5 issues. So that's why I'm like, yeah, it's not bad. And I'm also taking a break in between, so it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of, I don't mind doing that. But yeah, very much a 6 out of 10. Maybe even a 5.5 out of 10. Recommend, slight recommend. I will, go through, we'll show the artwork here. It does, also, one thing I will give it does give off that modern independent comics feel. And I did like that. That was what kept me going a lot, and it's hard to explain what I mean by modern independent comics feel. So unfortunately, for those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I'm not going to explain myself, because it's hard to explain. If you've read enough independent comics like I have, modern independent comics, you'll know what I'm talking about, hopefully. But it has that feel, and it kind of made me a bit nostalgic for back in the day, going to the comic shop and just picking up the most random comics that were from independent publishers. Because I had the money to afford them. Or I found them at, like, the trades. Like, honestly, this is a great example of a trade that I would find at, like $5 when the list price is, what, $20? No, $18. Close enough. When the list price is, like, almost $20 to find this at, like, $5. So I'm like, oh, let's pick this up. That's a steal. And then I read it, and like this is a great example of one of those bargain bin books actually being not that bad. Like, you pick up a bargain book, and you're like, wait, for $5, this must be awful, because they couldn't sell this damn thing. Then you're reading, like, oh no, not that bad. So, in that respect, this is actually a recommend, to be fair. And I got this for free, so even better. But yeah, so it had that, and it had this, reading this, it had that kind of feel of picking up those kinds of books, that modern independent comics feel, and also maybe nostalgic. So it had that going for it. I'll give it that. Like, even that Christopher Zabala book that I'm forgetting the name, Pantomime, that didn't really have that didn't get that full effect for me. But Zach Thompson's Cemetery Kids Don't Die, all books gave me that feel. Earth Divers. This is a series that I have the most mixed thoughts on. Starting out, first issue, I almost dropped this book like a sack of fucking potatoes. And I probably would have, if not for the fact that I decided to check out all 3 volumes at once, and I would feel kind of bad for bringing them all back the next day. Especially when I went out of my way to pick up Volume 1, because the library decided to get all 3 books from the same living library instead, because they had volume 2 and 3 in the same library, so why not volume 1? Just go all the way. They decided not to do that, and in turn, this one came in on Friday, the others came in on Wednesday. And unfortunately, I had to persuade someone, my ride, to take me on Saturday, different people, but it was kind of a pain in the ass. They had other places to be. They were fine with it, thankfully, and it was like, it wasn't that big a pain in the ass, but also like, well, and then when I started reading Earth, I was like, shit, I should have. It'd been really nice if IDW gave you the first issue. I mean, they do give you the first issue, but it'd be nice if they gave you the first issue of Earth Divers for free. So I would have read it, and I would have been like, yeah, no, we'll just keep it, and I'll tell the librarian to return to the library, so I don't like it. I wouldn't say, it would not have been that honest. I would have just said, like, I no longer wish to have this series, whatever, just return to the library, or it's going to let it expire. Because after a while, they just put it away if you don't get the book. But as the series went on, it got a little bit better. I will say that by the end, especially the last issue, it did entice me to check out. I don't want to say more and more excited to check out volumes 2 and 3, but it's not going to be as big of a pain in the ass for me to check out volumes 2 and 3. That being said, if for whatever reason I need to exchange that series for another one because I check out too much, or this or that, for whatever reason I want to exchange it for another series, I will not hesitate to do so. It gets so far, it's just a 3-volume series, it gets a 4 out of 10. 4.5. It's just not that good. It is all over the place, complete mess. It makes more sense as it goes along, but I know for a fact that it's not just me that I forget what I read the next day. Like, as I'm reading issue 6, I'm like, what the hell happened in issue 5? Now, one thing I will give it is that I do remember more from each issue. So, like, issue 1 was like, I remember nothing. Well, issue 2 was like, a little bit, and then as well along, I remember a little bit more and more. But I would still think it'd be really nice if volume 2 had a previously on Earth Divers, so the little catch-ups. I need it already, even though I'm reading it every day, once per day. That's pretty bad. It's not just me, and it's not just me in the case of, well, we can forgetful, blah, 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 this, or I just build. No, I remember things from comics I've read ages ago. Why the Last Man being the best example. But then I can't remember most details from an issue of a comic I read yesterday. That's pretty damn bad. It's not the first time it's happened, but there are exceptions for other books. This there wasn't really any. Other than it was kind of forgettable. The Beauty, Volume 1 of 6. I have read this series before, absolutely loved it, still absolutely love it. I am so glad this is being adapted to an FX series, and it seems like the Image Comics printings are selling out like hotcakes, It's now being published under Ignition Press, which I don't know why they changed publishers, and they are coming out with complete collections. Pick those up when you can, while supplies last. This is an absolute triumph of a series that's really damn good, really damn captivating. It's more captivating than anything. It's more of a page turn than anything. It's not breaking new ground, and it's not trying to either. It's just trying to create an interesting story in somehow a more interesting world, and it accomplishes that almost from the start. Absolutely must read, recommend, 10 out of 10 book. Red Hood and the Outlaws, volumes 1 of 2. Now, it's not 2 volumes, I don't think, at least. In this edition, it's not. In this entire run. However, it looks like I will only be able to read the first 2 volumes. Which is a shame, because this is another Scott Lobdell knockout. Scott Lobdell is that writer that I really do like. I feel like he's a bit undervalued. I feel like people give him too much shit. I find his stuff to be entertaining. Like, it keeps my interest. That's all I ask for a comic to do. Now, nothing has exceeded beyond a 7 out of 10 for me for Scott Lobdell. It's not been that, like, oh my god, you gotta read this. Holy shit. But even his Teen Titans run I don't completely hate. It is not my version of Teen Titans, but I think it gets a bit too much hate. I think if you look at it as a different version of Teen Titans, it becomes less and less of a insult. 7 out of 10 for Red Hood and the Outlaws. A really nice, really great start for this series, and I hope that they have at least the rest of this run. Now, one thing I will give it that is that you don't have to read the New 52 run. New 52 is also done by New 52 is also done by Scott Lobdell, and there's no like, oh, here's this random ass character that appeared in New 52, and we're like, oh, you're a bad. None of that. None of that. You honestly, like, there's no indication at all. It just follows that series. True Rebirth. Which I think that's what it should have been, but it wasn't. Wonder Girl Homecoming. I check this out so goddamn frequently from my library that I would not be surprised that everyone watching this already knows how I feel with this series. It is so damn good, and it's one of the best decisions I ever made to put this as a materials request book for my library to get, because you can do that now. Because ever since then I've been checking this out pretty frequently. Not as frequently lately, but it was a nice return to form, and I will continue to check this out very frequently. Joelle Jones absolutely knocks out the fucking park. This is one of the best modern DC books of all time, and it's such a goddamn shame that it's got prematurely canceled. We need more of Joelle Jones' Wonder Girl. 10 out of 10. Spider-Punk. This was not that great. Kind of bland, very basic, very by the numbers. It was very forgettable too. Like, I'm already forgetting most of what I read from this series. Not great. Cody Ziglar seems to be the kind of writer that just writes basic shit, and that's all he does. And you know what? To write basic rather than offensive, I think is fine by me. This is inoffensive, but also for Spider-Punk, it should push the envelope way, way more than it actually does. There's one use of wanker. I was surprised they got away with saying wanker. Yeah, it's a T+ in it. That's more of a British swear word than anything else, but still. They censor what culture sometimes, so for it not to be censored in family-friendly, PG-clean Marvel comics, that's pretty impressive. They censor ass sometimes in parental advisory books. Parental advisory books. And not as a joke either. Because they're like, oh no, we can't have the kids, it's gonna warp their minds. So I will give it that. That's gonna be one of the only things I remember from the series, though. If you want, if you're curious like I am, to check out, see how Spider-Punk does in comics form, hey, check it out. It's inoffensive. It will pass the time. I was never bored. I will give it that. 5 out of 10. What if Miles Morales? Yeah, that Thor issue is still awful, and pretty much all the other ones are bland and boring and not all that memorable. The Wolverine story by John Ridley, really the only one that I thought was at all standout. Very formulaic too. I was like, I forgot how formulaic this was. Like every issue, exactly the same kind of story. Like it would have the same beats, have the same twist ending. And I understand that's why it's a point, because 5th issue is like a culmination of all these guys together. But even that's boring. Like, I liked how it was more action than anything. It wasn't so heavy on the dialogue. But, yeah, just kind of bland and boring and not that great. 4 out of 10. Cody Ziglar's friend of Miles Morales. Now, Cody Ziglar did the 1st and 5th issues of What If Miles Morales, so I was like, you know what, let's read that before we read his actual run. And this is a great example of, you really need to read this before. You really gotta study that and take that into account, because there's a lot of shit that happened in those days, in those volumes. I was like, oh, I'm lost now. Now, to be fair, it could have been worse, and I think as it went along, there was less and less detail. I was like, what the hell? Who's this character? When did this happen? What? I thought it would be more like Red Hood and the Outlaws Rebirth, where, yeah, it would have benefited me to check out what came before, but I also don't need to have done that. Now, did I expect a complete rebirth for Miles Morales? No. But Marvel Comics is kind of good about doing that, like the the Captain Marvel by Kelly Sue DeConnick. You can start off that 2012 run and be fine. Perfectly fine. I would almost go so far as to say the 2014 relaunch, also written by Kelly Sue DeConnick, you could start there. I don't recommend you do that. I think you could. I almost want to go so far as to say that you can do that. But yeah, this was like completely like, what? And this is good. Other than that, like, it's more of a it's not a nitpick, it's just something that's an observation more than anything. So it's not a hindrance, obviously, it's just one thing they want to bring up. However, it is still pretty good. I still like this one. I will be going back to the Brian Michael Bendis run and starting from there. It looks like they might have all of Saladin Ahmed's run, which is where this one starts with. It's 8 volumes, so it's like, do they have all 8? I don't know. But interludes or otherwise, it seems like they have all 8 volumes. 6 out of 10. It was good. It was nothing groundbreaking, nothing that I'm going to be like, oh my god, this is where you should, this is one of the best Miles Morales books, blah, blah, blah. It's just as good as the Bendis run. No, the Bendis run is still my favorite so far. Which is, I haven't read much of Miles Morales, so Black Widow Widowmaker. 99% of this book is really damn solid 8 out of 10 shit. But then there's that Iron Man kiss and kill, which is awful. Like I've read this before. All of this I read before. How the fuck did I not remember how boring and annoying, honestly, it was to have read the Iron Man kiss and kill issue? That was awful. And of course I was like, well, it says material. There's 2 stories in here. I should read both. And I did, and it was awful. And the second story was written by Carl Kessel, who's a great writer. What the hell happened with that one shot? Thank God it was a one shot. My God, if I read more than that, I would have dropped this book like a sack of potatoes. But other than that, this series is really damn good. The only other minor nitpick I'll give, only other minor nitpick I'll mention is that, because the Iron Man Kiss and Kill is definitely not a nitpick. Nitpick in the sense that's just one story out of a myriad of other stories. Like, it's like a 30-page story in a book that's like, so yeah, I guess that's a nitpick. But not really, because of how bad the story was. But the Widowmaker issues 1 and 3 is written by Jim McCann, where 2 and 4 is written by Dwayne Zoriski. That's who it is. That's how you say his last name, I think. But I'll show the name, the credits. But the Dwayne issues are so much better paced than the Jim McCann issues. Jim McCann, it's like 90% exposition dumps. And it's like, you've been reading comics for a while, I think. It's not that old, but it's like, wow, that's a... Damn, do you know how to write comics? Holy shit, it's not the 80s anymore, or the 90s anymore. Why are we doing 90% exposition dumps that don't need to be that lengthy also? I don't know, but that's what it was. But other than that, these are all very solid. And even then, the Widowmaker issues written by Jim McCann, when it's not exposition dumps, is really solid. This is, again, very much an 8 out of 10, even with the Iron Man story put in there. Because it's 30 pages, it's like 20 pages. But it's still, it really affects the pacing of the overall. Like, if you're reading this all in one sitting, you should not do that. Unless you do that. Unless that's how you read comics. But I don't do that. I read 1 issue per day. So I'll do Black Widow, then Earth Divers, then Miles Morales, and so on and so forth. But if I was reading all this in one sitting, because I had to for whatever reason, yeah, that Iron Man book would have made this go from an 8 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10. That's how bad that Iron Man issue is. It's awful. Like, it's so boring, too. It's like... But anyways, 8 out of 10 for Black Widow. Widowmaker. Definitely get the Epic Collection. It's worth every penny when that comes out. Avengers World is another book, like with Wonder Girl, that I very frequently checked out because there's a lot of solid stories in here. Bit of a slow start. I really noticed that this time around with this start. It was kind of like a basic start because they're basic Avengers books. Yeah, they're trying to be a little bit different because it's John Hickman. I said, so it's Jonathan Hickman, so he does try something different, but even then, it kind of felt like basic Jonathan Hickman, even then, and I was like, this is basic superhero schlock, but then it gets really, really good, and it gets to the world outside your window stuff, where it's like, oh my god, this is what made people fall in love with Marvel Comics, even back then, in 2012, like even so soon as 2012. That's what made people fall in love with comics, and I've been comic fans since blah blah blah. And that's what got me into comics, is these types of stories that made me realize, oh, comics can be more than just the stereotypes that people give it, like people label as comics as. They can be more than that. And even stories in here, in the forgettable storyline as Avengers World. Forgettable as in, because there were so many Avengers books coming out around that time, it kind of got lost in the shuffle. So even for a book like that no one really knows about, no one really cares about anymore, it really is solid. Like, I would honestly say, when and if they ever reprint this book, buy it immediately. It is really damn solid. 9 out of 10 stuff. really damn good. 9 out of 10. I give it 9.5, but again, those first, I would say I would say like 5 to 7 issues are really like just basic, a little bit better. Like I'd still say it's still more than what people give comics credit for being, but it made it pretty obvious as to why no one really remembers Avengers World and why it got lost in the shuffle of the other Avengers books that were coming out around that time. Because one of the main criticisms people are giving this series is that you did not need to read this and it was completely useless, complete cash grab. And it kind of does make sense within the first 7 issues. I would say the first volume, because it's a complete collection of collecting, let's say, 5 volumes. First 4 or 5 volumes is what people were saying about it, but as 2 through 5 come out, and especially as it goes along that middle volume, it's really damn good stuff, and it was definitely worth checking out, like worth your purchase if you're getting the issues as they're coming out, like worth getting it. I mean, if you felt the need to be completist, it made it worth it in the end of the day. Really solid stuff. And finally, we have a series I talked about before, Once in Future. I've read all 3 volumes of 5. I don't want to say all 3. First 3 of 5 volumes, and it's really solid stuff. But I already feel like I need to reread it because there's a lot of stuff. This is a very, very dense, very involved comic. There's a lot of lore, and it's really good. I do like that. It's world building that I appreciate. World building for me is very hit or miss. You can have great world building like this, but then you can have world building I don't give a shit about, like in, and I hate to say this, unpopular opinion, like in John Wick. I do need to rewatch those movies. Maybe my thoughts have changed. It's been a while. But yeah, like I don't really care about John Wick because of that. First movie I loved. I wish we got more of that. But then the second one was like, let's build the world. I don't care. You're making this 2.5 hours long. It should only be 2 hours. But gotta build the world, and I don't care. So that's a great indication of how world building is very hit or miss for me. But so far 8 out of 10 for Once in Future. Maybe 8.5. 8.5. It's written by Kieran Gillen, and Kieran Gillen, I would say, like, it's in the middle of how I feel about Kieran Gillen. Not as bad as, actually I haven't read anything by him I actually hate it. I would say Young Avengers is the least good I've read from him. More on a reread, it was like, it's still really damn good, but completely pales in comparison to the previous Young Avengers run. So I'd say Young Avengers at the bottom for me. No! Immortal X-Men, because I dropped after 1 volume. So Immortal X-Men is the worst of what I've read, in my opinion, from Kieran Gillen. Best is Wictive. I would say Once in Future is towards the middle. It's going up the more I read it, but like also like it's going this, not like this or like this. It's more like do. Like I say, like let's say it's number 4, and it goes 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4 as I read it. Still really solid stuff. If you love Kieran Gillen, you'll love that. But also it's going 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. But that, as they say, is that.